Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the level 2 portion of the August 8th recording. And this topic is all about a refinery of consciousness and galactic personality characteristics. And so this relates a lot to level 1. This is why I talk about it's like learning basic physics and then advanced physics. So in level 1, we were talking all about this aperture on the body, this energetic anatomy, your inner eye, and also its connection to, this abstract divine connection, and the difference between seeing on an anthropomorphic level or seeing on an abstract level, and the sense of personal identification with whatever we touch with our tendril of attention, that we attenuate this tendril that sticks out from our, or emanates from our imagination. Our imagination is incredibly powerful. It allows us to see things that aren't actually there, to participate in a different level of reality beyond what we see with our physical eyes. So this is also how we transcend duality, that we're not merely seeing left eye versus right eye, we're also being able to add in a third variable and transcend those first two variables. So now we're talking about what we consider self. How do we define self, and what are the characteristics that we define as self? So let me go to the whiteboard. We got to clear away all of this from before. Clear all drawn. So if this is the galaxy, and here's a giant supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, and that is like the glue that holds everything together. And then here's a whole bunch of stars that are kind of like in a bulge. If we're looking at the galaxy edge on, there's lots and lots and lots of stars that are kind of concentrated here in this area. And I'm not going to make 10 million dots, but you understand the dots are stars. And then there are the kind of, spiraling arms that kind of go around like this, that emanate outward from the central galactic core over there. And as I was speaking about in last week's presentation, because we were talking about in level 1, the limitations of the speed of light, and how if we have an idea that is going to emanate from here, the center of the galaxy, if it's going to emanate in terms of linear distances, like just moving at whatever 1 mile an hour across linear space, it could take millions or billions of years to actually make it over to us, which is, very, very far away in terms of spatial distances from this center of intelligence. That's what I'm trying to say, intelligence. So if this is a great brain, if this whole apparatus that I just drew, a galaxy, is like a brain, it's actually a neuron in a much, much greater brain. But let's just say the galaxy is like a brain. This is where the thoughts are coming from. And those thoughts are neural impulses that are then emanating outward to all of the other stars and planets and participants that are here in the galaxy. And that if we're going by Einstein's limitation of the speed of light, then we are limited in the amount of time it takes for signals to get to their destination and then to bounce back or to respond. So what we need to do is bend the fabric of time, space, and consciousness to bring these two things closer together. Like if I bring together point A and point B by kind of folding the fabric of time, space, and consciousness, and then there's no distance between them, so then they're able to communicate much, much more quickly. So I'm now going to expand on that idea that we are part of a living being, that the galaxy itself is alive, and that thoughts emanate from this center of the galaxy. And the big takeaway is that all of the different stars, if each red X is a star, have different personality characteristics, and that they're divine. They're just like if we consider ascended masters or perfected divine beings, they're not flavorless, vanilla, nothing burgers. They are actually individualized, and they are spicy and interesting. I just need to drink a bit more. It's not like the Borg. It's not like, oh, you've ascended, you get to lose all personality characteristics and become part of a featureless, collective. It's not like that at all. That it's more like, oh, one guy's playing this music and one guy's playing this music, and they all mesh together perfectly. So it's not, there's individualization and individuality at the same time that all the stars are part of the cohesive whole. And that's just the stars. The stars themselves are part of this divine intelligence, or perfect intelligence. And now I'm going to draw little green dots. I hope you can see these little green dots around here. These are actual planets around the stars. And the beings that are living on the planets around the stars are not necessarily divine perfected beings. This is a big distinction to make here. And so that distinction goes down to, I think I've said this many times, if you need a clank metal spaceship to get off the surface of your planet, you're not ready to get off the surface of your planet. That the whole idea is these little green civilizations over here, civilization is developing on that planet, and it is supposed to be there until it's ready, until it is ready to be taken out of the oven. It's like, cook it longer. It can't get off the surface of its planet. It needs a metal spaceship to fly. Here, I'll go back to my face. If you need a metal spaceship to fly through space, you're not ready to come out of the oven. They need to cook you longer. You're not ready yet. So humanity is not ready to get out of the oven. Cook it longer. It's raw in the middle. Humanity needs a clank metal spaceship and space diapers to get off the surface of its planet. I spoke about this in previous lessons too. Not to be repetitive, but to re-emphasize the idea that it's not okay to just go like, you're crawling with microbes, fly to wherever you want to using a technology-based conveyance, and then spew your microbes everywhere. That's not okay. That's infection or infestation of like pests, not welcome visitors. You know, we have to be welcome visitors. Where Cheeky and I go for a walk, there's this park, and then there's a house that, you know, borders right on the park. And sometimes we go and visit the person that lives there. But I always tell her, like, you can't just barge on in. You got to have an invitation. You got to be a good, welcome visitor. And that's the whole idea. If this is a whole alive, where I'm pointing at the galaxy, pretend I went back to the picture. The galaxy itself is a whole alive being. And we want to be welcome participants in this whole alive being. We don't want to be considered horrible music players that are playing, like, get that guy out of the band. He's playing the worst music. We don't want to be the least, you know, whatever the most unwelcome players in the band because you're playing horrible music, like pooping in a space diaper and emitting tons and tons of microbes as you fly through space. So, well, what are you supposed to do? What you're supposed to do as a little dweller on a little green planet is be cultivated. Literally, culture. That's what culture is. It is cultivation, inner cultivation as an individual and as a social collective, to the point that you are ready to leave the surface of your planet without the need for technology. And in order to do that, it means you have to develop certain characteristics. And those characteristics are not only the characteristics of being a good musician, quote unquote, and being able to read music and know whether you're playing the right notes, and also to be sensitive to the other musicians. Like, you know, I know I'm supposed to play this note, but should I play it really loud? Should I play it really soft? Should I play it on top of that guy because he's trying to play his music? If you're a good musician, you listen to the other players. If you're a good organism, then you listen to the other organisms. And you're like, well, wait, I don't want to kill that guy because I'm busy living my life. I don't want to destroy that organism because I'm trying to do this over here. You begin to become much more accommodating and respectful of the other life forms and organisms that are in existence. And this absolutely relates to the initial teaching of level 1, which was all about the interconnectedness of consciousness, that Christ is consciousness, that there is literally no distinction to make between myself as consciousness, my dog as embodied consciousness, the microbes in my tummy and on my skin that are embodied consciousness, the grass outside that got mowed, that's consciousness, the trees, the, you know, what, like fish, like the planet herself, it is all consciousness moving at different rates, coming from different directions. So that's also pretty important, because some aspects of consciousness might be finely honed athletes that are like ready to run a marathon, and some aspects of consciousness might be very, very new participants, like little tiny children that are like, they don't know how to run, they haven't done any training, they are barely toddling, they're barely walking, they're crawling, they're pooping in their diapers. Like, everybody's at different levels. So and I'll get to the comments in the chat, which are really wonderful. All of this in order to say that there are many different influences on humanity right now, and some of them are wonderful athletes and some of them are still pooping in their diapers, okay? I'm talking now about the human genome, that there are many stellar influences on the human genome right now. that there was our original format, which we were light eaters and nobody died. That was death before death was invented, when death was never even experienced because everything was perfectly situated. And that then there is the change that happened when we had the degradation of the human genome and invaders came to this planet. Our genes, the genes of humanity, were modified many, many times. So to say that we have been influenced by the stars, here's how it goes. We're supposed to be influenced by the great mind, the great thinker or intelligence that is at the center of the galaxy, that's emanating all of those waves to all the stars. We're supposed to be influenced by the individual characteristics of individual stars that are not vanilla, nothingness, nothing burger, that are actually tasty, individualized, and have their own viewpoints. And we are not supposed to be influenced by beings that still live on the surface of their planet and can't fly off their planet without some form of technology or a space type. I gotta drink more. However, humanity has been heavily influenced into its present format by the technology using beings that can't get off of their planets without clank metal spaceships. Those are the ones that use dark magic, satanic technology. They are not natural empowered beings who are just connected to the stellar network, or connected to consciousness, who get all the information that they need and all the energy that they need just from, if you touch the sun, then you become the sun. I was just talking about, the tendency to identify with what you touch. So reach out and attenuate to the sun and to the stars. That's where you get your food. And then you also say, hey, I am that thing that I'm touching right there. So the transformation of humanity away from light eaters to beings that die themselves and have to kill other organisms in order to stay alive and grind them up with their mouth parts, put them in their tummies, and then poop them out behind, that is the influence of the people that live on the planets. Go back to the whiteboard. Just for closure, we need to draw this out. Here. Go back. These little green dots over here, let's draw a person, a humanoid. Here's a humanoid down here. So let's say this is the earthly realm, right? And here's where a human lives, right here on our planet. I'll make a planet itself. There we go. Human living on a planet. These beings that live on this far distant green planet over here, they're like, oh, I'm going to use technology, not something natural, not something based just in pure consciousness, but I'm going to use technology and I'm going to affect this guy's genes over here. And this guy's like, oh, hey, I'm going to affect this guy's genes over here too. Ooh, make my pen go down there. Oh, and this one's like, ooh, this is an affecting human genes party. I'm inviting myself. I'm going to affect this guy's genes over here too. And this guy gets in on it, and this guy gets in on it too. And that's just like the short story. So when people on our world right now self-identify or describe themselves as star seeds, this begins to become, it's a complex topic to approach in the right way, because there's all of these different stellar influences. The influences of the stars themselves, that's appropriate. Those are like expert musicians that should be playing through the vibrating strings of your DNA. Your DNA are not only transmitters that send out, they also receive. Remember, sympathetic vibration, compassion. So the stars are wonderful musicians. They're like the most amazing Mozarts. They're sending out all this music. And that music is coming to you and affecting your DNA. That's supposed to be going on. What's not supposed to be going on is some artificially amplified guy on a far distant planet that is making really crappy music. And, like instead of going acoustic, he's going electric, and he's using a magical headband to send out his waves, and his music is crappy. And they're affecting humanity. That is the story of humanity. So when people are like looking into their own DNA, and they're starting to use their attention to focus on their own DNA and to learn what's inside of it, they're like, wait, I'm a starseed. I got influenced by this, and I got influenced by this. So the critical question is, are you being influenced by the star itself, which is an impeccable participant in the symphony of life? Or are you being influenced by a distorted user of technology that actually is living on a planet someplace, sitting in a room doing the equivalent of drinking a cup of coffee? Like, oh, I'm going to drink a cup of coffee, and then I'm done with that, I'm going to fiddle on my technology device, and I'm going to affect, some human DNA in a far distant realm. That person is unethical. That person is not at the level of being responsible enough to affect somebody else's far distant DNA journey. But that's what's been going on. So level 2 in the recorded lessons on Teachable is, sorry, not level 2. Lesson 8 of level 2 on the recorded lessons on Teachable for this week is all about the variety of personality characteristics that combine together to make that galactic central persona. So we have the center of the galaxy that is like the glue holding everything together. It's a sense of self. Just like if I say my sense of self is named Aurora, that's the totality, and Aurora has different aspects of her personality. She has the tendency to draw and paint things. She has the tendency to, walk around the neighborhood with her little dog. These are, personality or behavioral characteristics and tendencies. And when you take this plus this plus this plus this plus this and a dash of rainbow lasagna and you put it all together, you get Aurora. So when you look at the recipe of the galaxy, there's that central persona that is named, galaxy. And then the individual stars are aspects, individuated aspects of that totality. Just like if we take white light and put it through a triangular shaped prism and we split it up and refract it into its individual color rays. So all of the different stars are individual personality characteristics that, just like the composite eye of a bee or the totality viewpoint of being part of Christ consciousness, adds up to the whole. This is the relation of how the level 1 stuff is integrating with the level 2 stuff today. That we are individuals that are part of this larger galactic scale Christ consciousness. And the stars themselves are individuated neurons in a great brain or individuated fragment viewpoints that make a mosaic that add up to the totality. And the stars are incredibly intelligent and incredibly benevolent, and they are living beings themselves. Like, they're not just dead masses of chemical reactions as human science tends to portray them. They are very intelligent themselves, and they have their own needs in order to continue to survive and thrive. Like just like we, like, you got to eat food, you got to eat peanut butter and jelly, you got to go for a walk, you got to do all these different things. The stars themselves have the different things they have to do in order to continue to be alive and healthy and vibrant and metabolize. And all of that is different than the beings that are on the planets. The planets themselves are like the stars' art projects. So the stars might say, hey, I'm going to make some life happen on that rocky planet out there. And the life goes through different levels of self-development and self-realization. With just like a painting, if the star is an artist and the planet is its sculpture or its whatever, animation or a painting or whatever, sometimes paintings go through ugly phases. Just like in the development of an organism, sometimes a culture or an organism might go through ugly phases. And there are characteristics that might be necessary in certain small increments, but would be overwhelming in larger increments. So now we're getting onto the idea of personality characteristics in the cosmos and whether things are necessary or whether they are pathogenic. So in the recorded lessons, I only speak about the idealized world. If we're looking at like a cell structure, I'm not even bringing in the idea that there could be a virus that's an infection or some other invading pathogen. Because in the recorded lessons, I was speaking only about the idea that all of these different characteristics are refractions of the central self. So theoretically, when you're meeting someone or something that has seemingly an aberrant personality characteristic, I'm trying to say in the lesson that that characteristic fits, but it's like a very unusual flavor that you're only supposed to have a little tiny bit of in a very particular recipe. So whatever, name a weird flavor like pickle, sour pickle, or tamarind or something like that. It's like you're only supposed to have a little tiny dash of that flavor. You would not want to have like, here's a gallon of pickle flavor. Like that would be horrible and totally overwhelming. So a lot of things that are personality characteristics that are in the cosmos. So here's personality characteristics can be like this. It can be the tendency towards violence. You say, that's not a good personality characteristic. Well, it's not. But it might be necessary in tiny increments in certain circumstances that you might need to have some amount of violence in a person's makeup, like their recipe of who they are, in order to have it be a complete and balanced and empowered individual. So I'm not justifying the existence of aberrances. I'm saying this is one way that it can be, these different characteristics can be looked at. So there's all these different space races that live on rocky planets, and some of them are cultures that are developing through their ugly phase, or like their awkward teenage years. They're going through their awkward teenage years. That's the nicest way I can put it. A lot of them are barbarians, and the blah, blah, blah. Their barbarian value system that is on their planet has been artificially amplified and augmented and then implanted or imposed upon our own journey, our own species here on this planet. So I don't think that the tendency towards certain characteristics that people define and equate as human nature, I don't actually think it's human nature. I think it is the nature of the invaders that are technological invaders that are not actually supposed to be influencing us, but which have unfortunately been influencing us for a very long amount of time. And those invaders are supposed to go through a continued refinery process until they're actually ready to get off their planet. They're supposed to mitigate those tendencies. So if you have a dash of violence in the genetic tendencies of a particular culture, you must also have all of these other flavors or characteristics or tendencies that rein in and control that tendency towards violence, so that it's not just rampant violence, so that it's appropriate, so that you can be a good musician who plays their music with other musicians. So you gotta, it's like, how can there be harmony in this entire symphony? We gotta say, okay, if your instrument, maybe it's a saxophone, your saxophone tends to squeak. Like, oh, that's that instrument, it can squeak if you play it the wrong way. But if you play it the right way, then it can make very beautiful music. Again, I'm not justifying the squeakiness at all. So there's two different things we got to talk about. One is personality characteristics that are artificially exacerbated or out of place. And then the other is the idea that I didn't bring up in the recorded lesson, the idea of pathogens. And this is big because there's this erroneous presumption in some spiritual teachings here on earth right now that acceptance, like unconditional love, means that you accept everything as it is. And if something is in existence, it is meant to be in existence. It must perforce be in existence. It's supposed to be there, and we should simply learn to accept it. And I'm trying to tell everybody no, that there are some things that are not supposed to be in existence, and those things are pathogenic infections. If we look at the entirety of consciousness as being like a cell, like you have a cell in your body, and there's the nucleus of the cell, that there can be a virus in the nucleus. In your own body, if you have a virus in your nucleus, you have two things in the nucleus. You have you, and then something else. So it is erroneous and simplistic. It is gives a partial picture of the world. If I only say to everyone, oh yes, when you're going around in the cosmos, you're meeting other personality characteristics that are all you. That's actually not true. That's actually very simplistic, and I need to clarify it now. That when you're going around in the cosmos and you're having all these adventures and meeting different aspects of her personality characteristics, some of them are you, and some of them are you, and they might just need to be further cultured, refined, and mitigated, but some of them are not you. And that's the real challenge, being able to figure out, can you read the musical score? Can you tell which aspects of self are playing the right notes, playing the right music, and which are total aberrations, things that are not supposed to exist, like a virus. So a virus in the human realm is a semi-alive being. It can't actually procreate or metabolize food or do a lot of the other things it needs to do to stay alive unless it has you, a host. So there are a lot of personality characteristics that are floating around in the cosmos that are only semi-alive. They can't sustain their own existence. The only way they can be in existence is if they have a host like you or I. So it is very erroneous to presume that everything that's in existence is part of the musical score, because then you got to do all sorts of mental pretzels, like twist yourself in knots to justify the unjustifiable, to justify totally twisted and distorted beings, totally twisted and distorted behaviors, and to look at things. So if we look at this world right now that we're in, on Earth, that is in many ways very screwed up. And if you say, well, it's supposed to be that way, God made it that way, everything that's here is divine, everything is perfectly fine, I'm just going to sit and accept it all. Like, that's actually not true. That there are a lot of things that are here on our planet right now that are not supposed to be here, that are pathogenic infections or infestations that are not supposed to be here. So the idea is there's a fail-safe mechanism programmed into the cosmos. If this is your planet and it's crawling with organisms or whatever, those organisms are supposed to get to their necessary levels of personal refinement before they're allowed to interact with all the rest of the other organisms out there. Like, you gotta go in your garage and practice. Practice in the garage. get better at your music before you go play with other musicians, because otherwise it's like you're just trying to learn and you're screeching, your saxophone is squeaking, you're playing horrible music that sounds like screeching, and the other guys who have already done their practicing, they're like, this is not very much fun to have to play with this guy screeching over here. So yeah, you got to do your own self-cultivation first. So those beings, what's supposed to happen is there's no technology, there's no augmentation, and if you're a good enough natural marathon runner, then you can get off the surface of your planet and you can become, quote unquote, a galactic citizen. You can interact with other far distant civilizations, other beings that have a different type of container, like a different species. You can share your thoughts and ideas, and you can also influence their behavior, and you can even share, like, you know, physical substances or stuff. You can like trade, like I'll trade you 5 of these for, you know, 4 of these, and you can have exchanges. And in order to do that, you have to be refined to these levels of maturity where you're not, quote unquote, crawling with microbes and then pooping in a space diaper, because that's like, those are the type of people that are like, oh, how can I eat you? How can I exploit you? How can I rape you? Like you can't have a good time with people trying to play music like that in the band. Let me drink some more water and check out the stuff in the chat. Okay. So the other question is, what do we do with these beings that are pathogenic, that are not supposed to be in existence at all? And that's like saying, like, if we refined these beings, we would refine them to a state of non-being. And I'll talk about energy versus entropy and the Bose-Einstein condensate. But let me get to the chat questions, because there's good stuff going on here. I know I make very funny faces when I look too. It's like, it's very tiny, I have to squint. Okay. Joel says, wow, so somehow we've still had these other beings like the Greys coming to interfere with and abduct us. They are not supposed to be doing this. I'm breaking in. Definitely not supposed to be doing it. Totally against every cosmic law, I'm guessing. Unless they are just these entities summoned by cults in elite circles and government. They are still getting here somehow in metal spaceships or unethically through portals. Okay, thank you for bringing that up. Really, really good segue into that. So the Greys are semi-alive beings. They are like viruses. They are partially technological beings. They don't have containers like you and I have that are, you know, gestated in a mommy's tummy and we have to eat food and poop it out in order to stay alive. They are more like clones or cyborgs, or, like I said, semi-alive beings. They don't have a direct connection to the stellar network. They can't eat light directly. They don't have a connection to love, and they are technologically augmented. So imagine this. Imagine if it's like, let me find like a thing. Like, okay, here, this. Like, you got to get a power pack. It's like, if I'm hungry, I'm like, I'm going to go eat a sandwich. If they're hungry, it's like, oh, you need a power pack. Let's implant a power pack in you, and now you're good. Like some kind of, you know, like Iron Man or something like that. They are not actually alive. And so the Greys are the end result of a particular timeline where what once were beings that are humanoid and very similar to our present state decided to go along the route of transhumanism. And it's a dead end, because at a certain point they can no longer reproduce, they can only be manufactured, and they also do not have life force energy and the capacity to create new things and to innovate new ideas. That's what I mean by a dead end. It's like, instead of a laser light beam that is so coherent that it keeps going endlessly, and it keeps on moving, across the vast reaches of space. Imagine light waves that get totally disorganized and they peter out and then they fade away. That's what their species is. And it's that way because of really critical, horrible choices that they made. So imagine all the people that we now see that are participating in transhumanism. They're either getting injections. Maybe their injections are to make them look more beautiful and more youthful. But then if they don't keep getting their injections, then their face looks horribly melted and they go horribly awry. Or maybe it's to keep them alive. There's some really, really ugly old billionaires that are, somehow that guy's still alive. He ain't looking so good, but he's still alive. They get all sorts of injections or implants or whatever. Treatments, their treatments keep happening. Or how about someone who might have completely acquiesced and might have had themselves cloned? Once you get cloned, there's no going back. It's like a Xeroxing process that destroys the original. It literally incinerates the original. So yeah, there's people on this planet who have participated in being willingly cloned, and they are just a horrible substandard copy of what they once were, and they don't have the staying power to keep going coherently through time. Their clones break down, And then what you're going to do, you're going to have to get a new clone. Get it, car breaks down, get a new car. Car breaks down, get a new car. They're thinking a disposable way. So that's what they're expecting. If we took those beings to their logical conclusion, and everybody got vaccinated and was sterile because of vaccinations, and the world became completely polluted through radiation and other, it became unlivable through all of that. That's the world that they live in. That's their future. And essentially, they have learned how to manipulate space, time, and consciousness through technology. And what they decided was, okay, we're going to need some genetic material to fix things. Let's go back in time and get genetic material. So yeah, they came back in time, and they've been trying to get genetic material to fix their problems in the future. And this is what many, resource harvesting abductions have been about. And yes, there were treaties that were signed with very, very totally with human world leaders who totally lack integrity. They're like, yes, I will sell you the ovaries of a certain number of my citizens in exchange for a small amount of your technology. Like, that's literally the decisions that they made. So you're beginning to understand how all of this happens. So all of these timelines, they're all interwoven and interpenetrating together. This is what I mean. Like, what is happening to consciousness is happening to all of us. It's really quite disingenuous to say, that guy's making horrible choices, but just let him do his thing and make his horrible choices, and he'll drive off a cliff, and then blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like you let people make their horrible choices, but then their horrible choices are totally affecting you. So these Greys decided that they were going to solve things by going back in time and either taking genetic material or making human hybrids or somehow manipulating the genetic field in order for their lives to be better. It doesn't, spoiler alert, it never works. It never works. There's a reason why their music peters out instead of continuing onward. It's because it's not good music. Only good music is supposed to stay alive. That's why you learn to play good music. When you play good music, you get to be alive. And when you play crappy music, here's crappy music, then you don't get to be alive. And it doesn't matter if you travel through time and steal somebody's ovaries, okay? So yes, and we'll talk more about, so who's influencing Earth? Many different species have influenced Earth. They've influenced your genes. They've influenced your power structures, like, let's say, how your food is grown. They gave you agriculture, okay? They gave you agriculture. They taught you who to worship. They taught you how to live together in quote unquote civilization. They gave you civilization. They gave you the written word. They gave you all sorts of inner tendencies. They have modified this body many, many times. They've spliced in other organisms to the body. They've taken out natural tendencies from the body. Like this, what we are in right now, this body that we're in right now, has been influenced many, many times. So if we're looking at a painting and you're saying, oh, this painting has a bowl of fruit, and then there's a cat, and then there's a flower over there, and the artist meant for all those things to be there. The answer is no. There was not one artist. There was the original artist that wanted to paint something, and then there was another guy that came along and did this, and an art restorer that came along and changed this and erased this out, and then another just random guy decided to spray paint graffiti on top of there and do whatever he wants to do on there, and that's how the current human body is being portrayed. So basically what we are given in this generation, in our present body structure, is an opportunity to choose which aspects of self we align with. And those aspects of self are genetic tendencies within ourselves. So this is when people are like, I'm a star seed, they're like, say like, I'm a Pleiadian, I'm a Sirian, like whatever they think they are or whatever. What they're saying is they hear a particular note, this note. That note is inside of me, and that note comes from that place, and I'm that note. But remember, there are many different influences inside of you, and it's crucial to identify with your true aspects of self. So if somebody on another planet built a magical ray gun that they could point at you and influence your DNA, your song, then it doesn't necessarily mean that they should do that. Why should you play their song? Do you like their song? Is their song worthy of being played? Maybe it's a crappy song. you get to make a choice in this body, in this time and place, what song you play. So that's a huge part of the rectification of what is going on here. Joelle is agreeing. She says, that's so true, Aurora. Every time I look at the stars at night, I literally feel like I'm in love. Beautiful. It is like being nourished by just looking at them. That's the really profound thing. I'm really happy and happy to collaborate with you on this. When we're looking at the stars, spoiler alert, we're looking at ourselves. That we are going to go through as individuals this process of refinement and transformation, and we also go through it as a collective human society and the planet and all the organisms here. And eventually, each one of us becomes this amazing stellar presence in the sky. And it's even better than becoming a star like a Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. That's not really that amazing. All these Hollywood stars, and they have like drinking problems, or they crash their car, they go with prostitutes or whatever. Like, that's not very impressive to me. But becoming a true star is very impressive. It's like becoming a real creative virtuoso and a very magical person. And it also means you have a lot of responsibility because you're creating reality. Thank you. Thank you. Drinking more juice. Okay, Salu says, do the subtle bodies such as the emotional body, intellectual body, and or the intuitive body have an atomic structure? To my definition of what atomic is, I would say no. I would say that the layers of the bodies that you mentioned and the layers of existence that you mentioned have a higher dimensional structure, but that it is not in the realm of atoms. So those things that you mentioned, they are all the intangible, invisible. You can't take a picture of them with the megapixel camera, even if it's a really 12 gazillion megapixel camera. It is, there are structures that are happening at the higher dimensional level or the level of time. Like when I show you the chakra drawings, it's happening at that level. Okay, Eric is saying, yup, about grays. I'm not certain they're alien and actually more so extraterrestrial. The first modern documented experience was via Aleister Crowley. They advanced their mental capabilities to the point they bred out the emotional body of their race and were no longer able to procreate because of lack of relationship with physicality. They have no understanding of emotions such as fear and trauma, which is one part of why they experiment on us. Exactly. Other reason is using our divine connection DNA to try and recapture their emotional bodies and be able to procreate again too. Yes, yes, yes. So yeah, and the person you mentioned, Aleister Crowley, he's one of those people that was highly unethical. He did not have permission to do this. He allowed lots of portals. It's okay, blah, blah, blah. Let's say that you have an impregnable fortress, but then you have one guard that's like not a guy with integrity. You'd be like, hey, like, I'll give you a beer if you let me come in. Be like, okay, sure, I could use a beer. And then he lets everybody come in. That's like what Aleister Crowley is like. He's like, hey, I'd like to have a small amount of personal power and wealth on the physical planet. And they're like, we'll give you a small amount of, we'll give you a beer. Let us come in. And that's exactly what they did. So yeah, he participated with all sorts of rituals that were about creating these, poorly structured portals, because there are portals that are supposed to exist where consciousness is supposed to flow through interdimensional, apertures, but they created artificial apertures, kind of like cutting the fabric of space, time, and place, or mushing it together in a way that it's not supposed to be. All of it was done very inexpertly. And so that mushing of the fabric of space, time, and consciousness, that was given to the United States government and ended up being in things like the Philadelphia experiment, which is it's like a blind person painting. It is like just slapping paint everywhere, not knowing what you're doing. They didn't know what the F they were doing. They completely screwed up on that. And that was intentional. It's like, imagine if you don't really want someone to paint a good painting. You're like, okay, sure. Like, here's some paint, mess around. And you know that they're going to completely blow themselves up because the paint is explosive. So yeah, they never want to empower humanity at all. They don't want to help, even though technically they're talking about their own ancestors. So yes, and I'm agreeing with you. So yeah, some of the experiments that Crowley did were during the atomic bomb blasts that were in the American Southwest. And there were some big, like, homunculus things that were brought out there to be irradiated. Because when you're playing with atoms, atomic explosions and atomic power, your timeline bleed through. If these are layers of time, like time fabric, you get timeline bleed through. Like if I was writing on with a marker on the top layer of fabric and it bled through to the other layers. That's what happens when you're playing around with radioactive materials and atomic-based explosions. So there would be a big portal that would be open there. So we brought this homunculus to try to blah, blah, blah. It's all very, very boring. They don't. The good news is the people that are doing that type of magic, they don't actually know what the F they're doing. So they muck about and they make a lot of problems and everything. It's like children like making horrible problems or whatever, but they don't really know what they're doing. So it's like they don't have the capacity to be as destructive as they'd like to be, I think, but it still makes a big, huge mess. Monique says, I am sorry to leave you now, but in the Netherlands, it's the middle of the night. Thank you for even tuning in. Oh my goodness. Check out the archive. And thank you very much, Monique, for being on the live thing for any amount of time. We really appreciate it. Joelle says, thanks for sharing that, Eric. It does seem possibly that Crowley was contacting them for power because they talk about the quote unquote old ones in occult circles with drawings that look just like a gray. Thank you, Joelle. That's right. And that's a good segue into secret societies. So when you become a high up Illuminati, Freemason, whatever, at the highest level, when they give you like, here's the real booklet and here's the real fine print, you read the fine print, it's like, oh, so you're really working for Satan, and P.S. Satan is a bunch of aliens. Like that, they get that real information, but only after they are deeply involved and deeply entrenched. So to make it very clear, these different occult traditions, everything from Satanism, like worshiping of a devil or worshiping of a demon, occult secret societies, the Illuminati and the way that they have religious and social control structures, and all of that is connected to these technology using space races that have been interfering with humanity and human culture and earth culture for a very long amount of time. And that's against cosmic laws. You're supposed to be able to develop as a species, play your own music, get out of your space diapers, and then fly off the surface of the planet and go play music with other people. And it's very hugely unethical. Like, how can you learn and grow if you're constantly being influenced by these totally horrible loser musicians? They're not even musicians. They're just noisemakers. They are horrible. So Pedro says, do we use our indigo chakra to separate the good, the bad, and the ugly personalities we meet out there? Great question. Painting in the dark, that would make some interesting results. So when you start to see through this higher vision and higher perception, everything becomes very evident. So seeing and perceiving accurately is one of the first parts of this. And then what do you do? So we were talking about that last week because there was the question of what do those pesky occupiers of the interstices actually look like? And so Brandon had shared a piece of artwork that visualized it, and I talked about my impressions of it. And the basic answer is that humanity is vulnerable right now because our ability to perceive has been limited. Like if you're blind, you can't really necessarily tell, like, is this a good looking person? Is this an evil looking person? Who am I talking to? And once your higher faculties come on board and you become awakened, you can be like, wait a minute, I can actually see your true face. And I know that you're freaking evil and I don't want to have anything to do with you. So humanity has only been able to be fooled by having those higher faculties closed down. So it's easy for a God to come along, a self-described God to come along and say, oh, you're blind, so you can't see my true face. I'm very, very beautiful, and I'm really, really God, and you should really, really listen to me and sacrifice all of your babies to me. Like humans couldn't tell because they were blind. So now that's the most threatening thing to the status quo. Like, wait a minute, what if all those humans actually get their eyesight back and they all actually become Christ and they can all actually see what the heck is going on? Then they would not be easily fooled, and they would also no longer be easily milked for energy or whatever. So what are we actually supposed to do? The answer is send beings that are pathogenic into a state of entropy. So this is another thing I must clarify. In the recorded lesson, which I did about 5 years ago, I was speaking in very simplistic terms. And I said, hey, all of these distortions of the field, these distortion entities, they have inside of them some spark of consciousness, like even a tiny fraction of a percentage of consciousness. So they should be refined. The consciousness should be refined out and is part of the field of consciousness. And then all the other stuff kind of goes to entropy. So I would say, be very cautious about that, because there's all these false teachings that are like, send everything to the light, send everything to the light. So I've had to be more specific now in what I encourage people in terms of their response to when we see things that are not supposed to be in existence, or pathogenic infections. So sending everything to the light would be like saying everything is supposed to go back to this central convergence point, just send everything back home. But I just got through saying not that long ago that there are such a thing as viruses that can be in the nucleus. And if you've got viruses in your nucleus, they don't belong there. They don't belong at that divine central convergence point. Viruses don't belong in existence. They belong in a state of non-existence. So what we're supposed to do with viruses is send them to entropy. And entropy is the opposite of energy. So in the flying rainbow lasagna, one of these points is the point of energy. That's beingness, having energy, having movement, having heat, having a sense of self-existence. I exist, I'm alive, I'm here. And then there is entropy, which is loss of energy, being cold, not moving through space, not being aware, not having a sense of self, not saying, hey, I'm here, I exist, but instead not existing, not having a mind to say that one exists. And these are both aspects of divinity and of unity consciousness. So now let me talk about the different layers of reality. I'll just go to the whiteboard super fast in order to tell you about the Bose-Einstein condensate. And this might be review for anyone who's been in the class at the advanced level before, but there's, oh my goodness, no, go back. Here, come on, here we go. This is Cheeky time. Come on up, girl. Cheeky's here for the Bose-Einstein condensate. Come on up. Come here. Just, I don't know. She's considering it. She just woke up from a nap. I'm all excited. Come on up, girl. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Cheeky, we're going to talk about the Bose-Einstein condensate, okay? All right. Aw, good girl. I didn't even have a chew toy for her today. She just took a nap all afternoon. So there's different layers of matter. We are familiar with solid matter. I'm solid matter. Cheeky's solid matter. My computer is solid matter. And I think we're familiar with liquid. I drank all of my juice, but juice is liquid, and the air around us that we're breathing and that is being moved by fans on this very hot day is air. And then we've got light that is flying all around here. And it's unorganized light, and that's another layer of matter. And then there are beams, and I don't have a laser, but if I had a laser beam, I would shoot the laser beam, and I would say that's like the pinnacle of when we focus energy up to that point. So we've got solid, liquid, gaseous, plasma, which is like flame of fire, and then a beam, like a laser beam. And those are the basic states of matter. But we also have this basic state of matter that is even more dense than physical matter. So if I just walked this up the keyboard, if I just said, okay, we're starting here, it would make it turn it up a little bit. Sorry, do it right. Starting here, there's solid, liquid, gaseous, plasma, beam. That's like the highest note that we get up to. But then there's an even lower note than physical matter, and that is the Bose-Einstein condensate. And the Bose-Einstein condensate happens when we take physical matter and make it very, very cold, because all of our matter is made up of molecules that are moving around, that are doing stuff. They're vibrating, they're mushing into each other, they're bouncing off of each other. And when we freeze something, we take energy away from it. We make it go towards entropy. And something really amazing happens when we take matter and we put it almost all the way towards entropy, taking almost all of its heat away from it. Atoms start to behave differently. Instead of being individuated, singular things that are out there, they start to kind of smear on top of each other, and they act as if they are all one giant atom. So these personality characteristics that are not supposed to be in existence, what we do with them, or where they are supposed to go, is they're supposed to go into a state of unity or oneness that happens from non-being. That this state is an oscillation, this shape rather, is an oscillation or represents the switching back and forth of being and non-being. And that those are both two valid aspects of divinity. Being, it's like being intelligent, I'm awake, I'm alive, I'm conscious. I'm aware of stuff. Stuff is going on and I recognize it and I know it and I feel it and I talk to other stuff. And then there is non-being. I'm not here. I'm not here to talk about anything or to feel anything or to interact with anything or to be anything. So what we're experiencing in our world of multiple timelines and events and various different people is a refinery And that refinery brings the things that are supposed to go to energy, to continued life, to continued life. And the things that are supposed to go to be frozen, get frozen. And that's the basic answer here. That it's difficult. It's just like we're making aesthetic choices. If I'm looking at a painting and I'm saying, in this painting, what are the things that are supposed to be there? Is the bowl of fruit supposed to be there? How about the vase of flowers? How about the picture of a cat? Cat, you know, whatever, like a portrait of a cat. Are all of these things supposed to be there? How about the graffiti? Is it supposed to be there? So we need to start to make very good, let's say, aesthetic choices as co-creators in this wonderful artistic realm of what's supposed to be there, and which characteristics are supposed to be there, which people are supposed to be there, and if something is not supposed to be there, what you do. I'm not talking about sending anyone to the guillotine, but this is all about making internal choices. So all of those influencers from the stars, they're all influencing your DNA. Your DNA is making a song. You want to play a pretty song. You're like, I want to play this beautiful music. So I'm not going to play this. That's not my music. I'm not going to play that. Even though it might exist in the musical score of my DNA, I'm focusing on pretty music over here. So we all, that's the amazing thing that we, because there's all these questions in human religion about free will versus predestination and God and all these things and whether you're allowed to make your own choices. Like, yes, of course you're allowed to make your own choices. Like that, I can't even imagine anything otherwise, but yes, you're supposed to, as a musician and as an artist, make your own choices about what you are, who you are, what you express, which stellar influences do you express through your personal instrument. Okay. All right. So Pedro is saying, yes, sending everything to the light is not the same as sending to the sun where impurities will be burned off. Beautiful. That is exactly right. Yes. So this whole entire experience of being in time is meant to be a refinery where certain characteristics continue to move through time, and certain characteristics no longer move through time because they are not supposed to be part of the painting. They're supposed to be erased. And sending them to entropy is the equivalent of erasing them. So let me just check out. Oh, and I'm going to scroll all the way back. There's another question that I want to get to that was a carryover question from way, way, way back. Here we go. This is, the original question was from Pedro, who says, wrote down something that I thought the other day. Are we confined? This is the question that I want to talk about. Do we have a barrier that causes physical discomfort, pressure, or pain if we try to move, stretch, grow like a bird inside of an egg? And then Pedro says, we must push our boundaries even if it hurts. The more we push, the stronger we get. And when we break, what confines us, the rewards will be infinity and eternity. That is so beautifully written. And so it's a very good topic for me to end on. Let me just drink a little bit more water. Because the confinement that I think you are asking about and referring to is genetic. It's a genetic confinement, like we're limited in the dance movements we can make, that also has the experience of limitations of our consciousness. And if our consciousness is the spaceship that we use to fly through space without having to wear a space diaper, then we are limited here in this experience of life. And what we're trying to do is transcend those limitations. So yes, just being in a body, having our consciousness in these containers, means that we are limited in a certain way. And it's very challenging. There are limitations of perception, and there are limitations of ingestion. Like, how do we go back to being light eaters? So I've been explaining to everyone, I'm like a combo, a hybrid of, I eat physical food, I eat whatever, apples and bananas and good stuff. And I also do sun gazing. I do both of these things. So that good apples and bananas and, whatever, beef jerky, that feeds my physical body, and the sun gazing feeds my light body. And when I first came here as Aurora, I tried to just eat nothing but pure sunlight because that's what I'm used to. I didn't understand. I'm like, wait, like what's going on here? Like I'm feeling my body's getting smaller, and I'm feeling very weak, and I don't know what's going on. Like I literally had to learn, like, okay, you're going to have to eat some food. And then I had to learn what food to eat and what time of day and what combinations. Like it's just like being a young person when you have to learn about all these different, eating of food and whatever. So yes, I had to learn that I couldn't jump directly to being a light eater, that my own body as an individual and ourselves as a human collective we're on this transformative journey. And I literally thought that I would be out of here in 2003. I thought it would just take a couple of years and then like, we're going to transcend this. We're going to just, you know, get on out of here. And no, it's actually taken quite a long time. So I've had to learn, like, I have to change my expectation of how fast this transformation process goes. But please understand, it is definitely ongoing. So we are essentially returning to our Edenic state, like the Garden of Eden, where nothing has to die and we can eat light directly and we can all be brethren or sistren or family members with all animals and all plants and not have to eat them. And plants and animals don't have to be protecting themselves from us. Like, that's pretty big. Because if you look at, like, why do plants have thorns? To protect themselves from you and me and other animals that want to eat them. Like, there's all these lectins and other things like that that are saying, hey, plants don't want to get eaten. So all of that defensiveness gets to go by the wayside, and then our true, our energy gets to be devoted to our true connection, which is interacting in consciousness. Like we're supposed to be playing music together, not eating each other, but we have to eat each other because of the constraints of this body. So what we're doing is healing on a profound level the constraints of the body, the way that that's affected our human culture, the way that that's affected our planet and all the species on our planet. And because we've been influenced by all of these distant star cultures, our healing influences all of those distant star cultures. So if you have a tendency inside of your own genome that's to be connected to whatever, the planet of the green slimy monsters, and you're like, wait, I want to identify with them as my family members. I want to change and go over here and everything like that. That has a huge impact on the culture of the planet of the green slimy monsters. And we'll say the green slimy monsters, maybe they have a place in the world. Maybe there's some aspect of them that is a viable characteristic that should be in existence, and they're still pooping in their space diapers and they're not actually ready to get off the surface of their planet, and their music should be turned way down until they get it together and can actually keep the beat. And so when you no longer tune into their vibration, you no longer listen to them. As like I said, the Jews became the Jews because they got attuned to a particular voice in the sky that said, follow me, I'm a column of light by day and a column of smoke by day and a column of fire by night. Come on, like they followed a voice in the sky that gave them signs in the sky, or whatever, Constantine's cross in the sky. Like there's all these different things. Who are you following? So yes, religion is part of who one is aligning oneself with on a genetic level in terms of which star civilization you are aligning yourself with. So when people ask me about where I'm from and who I am, and I always say I'm part of the stellar network and whatever, I'm not from a planet, and I'm not from a particular star, I'm from the entire network of stars. And also the value system of my star network is love, unconditional love, and freedom. So those are the things, like, because it's like, if you can't say like, what's your address? Like, I don't have an address, I'm nomadic. And how do we describe the benevolent ones, the ones that you would wish to interact with, or who would you want to be, or which characteristics would you want to embrace? You'd want to embrace the characteristics that are expressions of love, of divinity, of freedom, and that you then align yourselves with the good musicians. So that was a really beautiful question. So the answer is yes, I do feel that we are constrained, and being in this body and comparing it to what I'm used to, like, oh my goodness, it's like, I didn't even know how to describe it. Like definitely like wearing tight shoes. Like, oh my God, like we got to wear these tight shoes. Yes, you got to wear the tight shoes. But I'll also tell you, I've done a lot of work at transforming my body so that it's more happy and comfortable to be here. I'm not feeling pain and discomfort. And so, you know, whatever I do, different lifestyle things in terms of what I eat and what I do and how I live my life in order for my body to be comfortable. So our bodies should be comfortable. You shouldn't be like sitting and be like, oh, ow, my back, ow, my shoulder, ow, my this, ow, my that. You should be happy and comfortable, but just being in a body and having to eat food, these are certain limitations and levels of constraint. And there are also levels of constraint on what we can perceive. So everyone thinks, oh, the solution is to get rid of your body by dying and then you'll finally be free. No, that's not the solution. The solution is to transform our bodies. And we can do that in this generation. You don't have to be like, oh, well, I'll die and I'll pass things along to my daughter's generation and then she'll transform. No, that's not how it's supposed to be. Each one of us, including little infants and dogs and redwood trees, we're all supposed to be transforming in this generation, in this level. So now back to the response down at the bottom. I have to scroll. Pedro says, in a past class, you mentioned that after the physical death, the consciousness remains, so it doesn't unravel instantly. Do we have options or choices if we hit the GOTA, which is game over, try again membrane? Yes, there are a million different types of experiences that can be had on the membrane of death. Everything from just time loops, like repeating over and over, to having your consciousness hijacked and horribly tortured. Like there are all sorts of different experiences that can be had there. And so I generally say the best thing to do is to avoid the membrane of death. And a lot of what your experience is, that's like the after effect, has to do with what you experienced in your life. What was your experience? What was your belief system? What was your religious training? Because the membrane of death is literally a world of pure mind where you're no longer limited by the physical world. And it is the logical extension of what you did, like extrapolation, kind of like if you're a particle, you're moving in this direction, you die, and you simply continue moving in the same direction that you would have moved in. So if you're not moving in a very good direction in life, like if you're a self-destructive or whatever, or, you know, unhappy or whatever, you'll keep on experiencing that on the membrane of death. And that's what these pesky occupiers of the interstices, they bank on that. That literally is their bank account. They're like, this guy's a horrible alcoholic in life. He's going to die. And then he's just going to keep on being a horrible alcoholic in the afterlife or whatever. Like, I'm just trying to think of whatever is an example, like people who are tortured and tormented and mediocre and downtrodden in life. And then they die, and they just keep on experiencing that in a virtual reality world that is known as the membrane of death. Now we're relating to what I was talking about with Christ consciousness. Like if you think like, you're going to die, you're going to go to Christian heaven, it's going to be so great. Like you're going to the membrane of death, where there's a virtual reality that has been set up that makes you think, oh, it's Christian heaven. Like that ain't heaven. That is not heaven, because heaven is the freedom to go wherever you want to go, do whatever you want to do, and play whatever music you want to play with whomever you want to play it. And it's a wonderful experience of freedom, but you don't experience that by dying. That level of freedom that I just described, it's what the stars are doing. They are having a huge cosmic dance party. They are singing. They are playing with one another. They're creating. It's totally freaking awesome. That's where you want to be. And the way that you get there is through personal cultivation and learning how to travel on the system of the stars without a space diaper. Okay, Pedro says, is your collective in the galaxy, or it includes stars from all over the universe? My collective is not just one galaxy. So when I was using the galaxy example at the beginning of this lesson, I said, hey, this galaxy is like a brain, but in truth, a galaxy is really just a neuron. And that all of the galaxies that are together in this universe, and I use the word universe specifically, meaning just this timeline, all of the galaxies add up together and they make like a great brain. But that great brain is higher dimensional. So it acts across all of the universes, all of the timelines, all of the possibilities that are crammed together at the train station, all the trains lined up at the train station, that great brain has many different versions in many different other timelines that are all communicating together, that are all thinking together, that are all making this beautiful harmonic music. So my collective travels on the stellar network, and the stellar network is not just in this version of reality or universe. It is in every verse, the multiverse, which I define as the cosmos, every timeline. So we travel through every timeline. And that's good too. You don't want to be just stuck on one timeline. You want to be able to go on any road that you want to go on. And the roads are always constantly being repaved and being changed, and the routes change. So you have to learn how to figure out the new routes. So Ben says, interesting question. I have heard some advice. Do not go into the light, as it may be a trap. bringing one back to the physical realm, perhaps in a bad way. I think that that's the distortion that's going on now, that we've got artificial technology that I call tractor beam for the soul, that is being used in order to harvest humanity at the point of death and divert it into whatever eddies of consciousness, whatever virtual reality fantasy lands have been programmed in order to limit and constrain you. So some of them are hellish, and some of them are, you know, slightly less hellish or slightly more, whatever, comfortable, but none of them are true freedom. So that's why you want to avoid them. So yeah, because the Bardo Todal, which is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, says all these things like, don't go to the red light, don't go to this color light, don't go to this color light, go to this color light. But here's what I'm trying to say. All of those rule books were written before the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So that's like saying, when you go to Tibet, always be sure to turn right, then turn left, then turn right again, and then you find the restaurant I'm talking about. That none of those, they had a complete repaving of roads. So none of those directions are effective anymore. No prophecies are effective anymore. You have to go totally on your inner vision. So don't go on anything that anyone else tells you, anything that's written in a prophecy, anything that's written in a moldy old book. You have to be a jazz innovator in the moment and say, well, the book told me not to go here, but I want to go here, so I'm going to do what I want to do. So yeah, I would say don't like, just because it's erroneous, just be like, we're going to send all evil to the light, and then they'll become light. And when you die, just go to the light. It's these simplistic things that are definitely what is erroneous and misleading to many, many people. So Pedro says, I guess what I'm trying to understand is if we hit the Gota without the constraints of the physical body, do we get a higher understanding of where we are and can do something about it? No, in many ways it is not empowering. And then he's saying, wow, so your collective is really big. Yes, my collective is really, really big. Yeah, when you hit the membrane of death, it is not a place of empowerment. It's kind of like, if you imagine if you were in a raft, like a whitewater raft, and you get tossed overside and you're just like in the rapids, like, wow, I'm in the rapids. Like, you're not in control of anything. You're just bouncing around, totally not in control. And the idea is, it's easier on you if you unravel fast as opposed to unravel slow. Some people take thousands of years or even millennia, several millennia, to unravel on the membrane of death. It's like pulling off the Band-Aid as slow as you can possibly pull it. Like, it's not better. It doesn't get better the slower you do it. It actually is just horrible, extensive, painful torture that should go. Just do it fast. Do it fast. You know, just a very instantaneous unmaking. Eric says, also, this may tie in, supposedly this is our last cycle in this dimension. So if you want to ascend now, if you're to come back when we're at 5D and higher, I'm not sure I'm articulating it properly. I think we're along the same lines there. That because what is happening now is everything is changing. The foundation of reality has changed. The foundation of reality has changed. Just like when death was invented, the foundation of reality changed. Well, now we have invented the transcendence of death. The foundation of reality has changed again. So if you're saying like, okay, I know the foundation of reality has changed, now we can transcend death, but I'm just going to die and then come back in another body and then I'll transcend death. That's not the right attitude. The right attitude is, whoa, wait. We've been trapped in this room for however many millennia, and now the door is finally open. Let's go out the door. That's what it is. So not a big part of it is not being attached, like not being attached to your identity, to your present context, to your present circumstances, to your expectations, to be ready for the total adventure of consciousness. Because if the foundations of reality have been changed and transformed or rewritten, redefining everything from every level, from whether we eat food to how our body functions. If we don't have to eat food, what is the function of our teeth? The answer is they're nerves. You're meant to feel stuff with your teeth, not to grind up stuff with your teeth. It's just the funniest thing. And people get punched in the mouth too professionally. I'm like, oh my God, that's horrible. Like, you're supposed to feel things with your teeth and not to eat things with your teeth, but this is different. So yes, so we redefine our whole entire body. And also remember, we've been monkeyed with, literally, in terms of our physical presence and these genetic engineers. So what we also need to do is retransform. But we don't just have to retransform, like step backward, like in Photoshop. You don't like the picture, step backward. We can actually move forward in a very positive way. So we can transcend these limitations and not have to have them ever imposed again. Okay, so wait. Salu says, yeah, but spirit can skip time, so to speak, and access whatever cycle it needs to. Cycle as an earthly time cycle. Yes, of course. Like, I mean, I won't say, oh, all hope is lost. I never give people that impression. What I am trying to say is that it's like, if you think like, oh, because a lot of people think, I'm just going to die and then I'll do that in my next life. Or I'm going to die and just pass that along to my kids. That is not the correct approach at this point in reality. That what each one of us can do is say, hey, I can heal myself in this generation. I can heal my ancestors by healing myself. I can heal my descendants by healing myself. I can heal human society. Like, there's a lot of kicking the can down the road. There is no more road. Don't kick the can down the road. There's literally no more sidewalk. We have to take care of all this stuff now. So anybody who's thinking like, oh, I'll just take care of this in the afterlife or blah, blah, or come back again, like, that means they ain't taking care of it. And that means that they're not ready to go to the next level. They got the space diaper. They ain't ready. So, oh, wait. Okay. So Pedro says, my intention is to ascend, but I like to be prepared in case I don't get what I want. I hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I totally get it, man. So let's say if you died, then the best thing that you could possibly do was to instantaneously unravel on the membrane of death, circulate back around to the beginning, and make slightly different choices. Like, you did pretty well in the video game of life, but then you hit the membrane of death. So go back to the point that you made those critical choices and get yourself into alignment. Ascension is inevitable because you're saying like, you're planning for the worst. It's very pragmatic. I understand why people do this, but ascension is literally inevitable. It is written into the map of who you are. It cannot be stopped, but it can be delayed, which is what has happened on Earth, in Earth with humans for a very, very long time. It's been like, kick down the road, delay it. There's no more delay. And that's also why it actually helps evil beings. If you delay, if you're like, I'm going to just do that tomorrow, next week, after 10 years, I have a family to raise or whatever, you have to like not do that. You have to say there's no time like the present. And you begin with that now. So Ben says, wish I'd not had my quote unquote wisdom teeth taken out years ago. Interesting. Always felt weird about them being removed. Seems like another scam medical intervention. I have heard it's possible to regrow teeth, however. Yes, it is absolutely possible to regrow teeth, and it has to do with effectively stimulating a tooth bud, which is at the root of a tooth and contains stem cells, with either a particular electrical stimulation, like a particular hertz frequency, or sound. And now we can understand how, if you're making the right sounds with your larynx, that you can make new teeth grow in your mouth. But you're like, Aurora, that's magical. Like, that's superhuman. That's right. That's magical and that's superhuman. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for the type of things that we can do in terms of healing our bodies. So if you are totally toothless and wear dentures, or if you have mercury fillings or whatever, don't give up hope. Don't be like, oh, well, I'll just have to die and get a better body that doesn't have destroyed teeth, and then I can finally ascend. No, that's the whole point. Your ascension or transformation on the spiritual level is inevitable, and it is consciousness-based, and it shall not be limited or impeded by the difficulties in your physical body. Your physical body will respond to your ascension or transformation in terms of energy and frequency, and your physical body will begin to behave differently. If your mind can create matter, or if matter responds directly to your mind, your body is the first matter that you are affecting. You can absolutely talk to your body with your mind and create new aspects of body or new behaviors with your body that would be defined as profound healing. And I understand if you're like not wanting to have your wisdom teeth taken out, you feel like that's a loss. What the real difficulty is orthodonture. Orthodonture is a horrible, barbaric practice because it's being done totally without the guidance of higher faculties, and the teeth in your skull, they are like tuners for your antenna. So these horrible orthodontists are just being like, oh, we'll give you a pretty smile. But what they're really doing is changing the architecture of the tuners, making everybody go out of tune. That's another tool for society to make everything go out of tune. So my recording is running a little bit long. I think I got to all the essential items that I wanted to get to, and really great, insightful questions in the chat. So I'm going to end the recording for right now and do my customary thank you to all current patrons, and also encourage everyone who wants to please enroll in the actual recorded lessons, because you can tell I'm referring to something while I give these speeches or lectures, and it's worth checking out the thing that I'm referring to. So I'm going to end the recording with thank you very much.